Já apareceu, Ana?
Isso aqui.
Apareceu?
Sim, apareceu. Uhum.
Boa tarde, pessoal. Obrigada, Ana. Você quer falar? Pode falar.
Sim, só para... Boa tarde, gente. Vamos começar um seminário, hoje internacional. Eu vou colocar a lista de presença no chat do YouTube, para os alunos irem assinando, e vou passar a palavra para a Juliana, que vai fazer a introdução do nosso palestrante de hoje. Obrigada, Juliana. Thank you, Tomislav.
Obrigada. Muito obrigada, Ana. Pessoal, boa tarde a todos, é um prazer estar aqui, e eu vou passar a falar inglês para poder apresentar o nosso palestrante, tá? So, Dr. Tomislav Meštrović, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a great honor to have you here. So Dr. Tomi, he's an MD and he has a PhD in biomedical sciences and clinical microbiology, and he's a sexual medicine consultant specialist. He is a brilliant scientist and medical doctor, so I'm gonna summarize a little bit because you're super successful and we're very honored to have you here. So he is actually actively involved in the most important health research and institutions in the world, including the World Health Organization and ASM. He's also a Fulbright alumni, and he's a fellow of the Global Young Academy. Tomi strives towards evidence-based teaching and knowledge diffusion. On top of all of this, Tomislav he also found time to help Tatiana Pinto and I to provide the first grad course in international relations. And he's been doing this for a few years now with us. And the course name is Microbiology of Sexually Transmitted Infection, and it's an advanced topic in international relations. And this year will be extra special because he'll be with us live at the end of the course. So without any further delay, I'd like to give you the stage so we can see your wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Tomi, for being with us again. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you for such wonderful introduction. Thanks both to Juliana and Anna. And it's always a pleasure and privilege to be here with you all and with students. And I'm very happy that I'm finally going to see all of you and students and teachers, but the university live as well. And for now, I will just wish you all a boa tarde a todos. I don't know if I pronounced it well, but I will practice when I come here. So this will serve as a course introduction, as an introduction to me as a lecturer, but also as an introduction to the topic that we will discuss and why this topic is of extreme importance for both fundamental and clinical research, but also for public health in general. And the thing is that more than 1 million sexually transmitted infections are acquired every day around the world. Majority of them don't have any symptoms. And for example, if we look then on a yearly basis, each year there is an estimated 370 million new infections, with 1 out of 4 STIs, and these STIs will have special emphasis during this course. These are chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and trichomoniasis. And more than 500 million people that are aged between 15 and 50 years are estimated to have a genital infection with herpes simplex virus. Also, if we look another virus, human papilloma virus, that we will also look at this during this course, it's associated with more than 500,000 cases of cervical cancer every year. And this amounts to approximately 300,000 deaths from cervical cancer. And almost 1 million pregnant women were estimated to be infected with syphilis on a yearly basis. And this can result in stillbirths, this can result in newborn deaths. So this is important to have in mind. And the numbers are worsening for some of these infections, which is why actually we need to acknowledge this increasing significance of this problem and see where are the weak spots of these organisms from a fundamental clinical point of view, so we can address them effectively. And here I would already like to make a distinction between what is a sexually transmitted infection and what is a sexually transmitted disease. The primary distinction lies in labeling an infection when you have a microorganism that multiplies in human tissues, potentially without causing any damage. You don't even know it's multiplying. But when tissue disruption occurs, when there is damage, when symptoms arise, then you have a disease. And frequently these terms are used interchangeably. But I believe if we clarify this from the outset, from the start, we will have also an easier time following the course as well. And here I would also like to stress that sexually transmitted infections have a direct impact on sexual and reproductive health, also through stigmatization as a psychological consequences, but also through infertility, cancers, various gynecological tumors. You can have all kinds of complications in pregnancy. So if you see here, primary infection with gonorrhea and chlamydia in women usually doesn't have any symptoms. But then if you don't catch it early, if you don't treat it, the infection might migrate upwards from the lower reproductive tract, and then it leads to the inflammation of the structures in the abdomen. Then you have pelvic inflammatory disease, you have inflammation of the uterus, you have inflammation of the fallopian tubes, ovaries, all other structures in the pelvis. And then it can result in maybe life-threatening conditions. It can result in infertility. And also, if you have an infection you don't know during pregnancy, it can also result in stillbirth, fetal loss, and all kind of malformation of the fetus. So this is why we have to take into account these serious and grave potential consequences. So this is a figure from a rather recent study that was published in the journal Lancet, Infectious Diseases. It looked at global burden and trends of sexually transmitted infections from 1990 to 2019, so 30 years, and showed considerable variation. We can have up to 5 times variation in the burden and trends of STIs across the globe. And this is valid both overall and for particular infections. And in general, you see here that Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean are so-called hotspot regions. They have the highest age standardized rates, incidence rates of STIs in general in 2019. So this is something where we can compare different regions and countries, but in any case, like notwithstanding these differing rates, the number of infections globally has increased in these 30 years. And also what the study shows is that younger people have a higher STI burden than other age groups. And also we have a very increasing trends here. And this is especially pertinent for syphilis, once thought an eradicated disease. Now we see increasing trends. And also female individuals are shown to be more affected with the burden, which means negative consequences of STI, more disabilities. And this is in line we have just mentioned with what we have just mentioned on these serious consequences, potentially serious consequences of STIs. And on this image, you can see that there is an increasing prevalence of STIs in correlation with the Social Development Index. It's an index that, in short, shows how well developed is a certain country in regards to healthcare and other demographic factors. And the key diseases that we will discuss in this course are actually depicted here. You see genital herpes represented in blue, you see syphilis in purple, gonorrhea in green, you see chlamydia in pink, and trichomonas in orange. And the geographic distribution of STIs seen here is consistent with previous findings by the World Health Organization in 1999. And even then, Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia, and Latin America were identified as regions that had the highest age-standardized incidence rates of these diseases. And of course, we also now know several contributing factors in these areas, such as poverty, limited access to healthcare, such as lower awareness of sexual health in general, deficiencies in screening approaches, and also when you have lower options for treatment, this translates to higher burden as well. And all of these factors collectively render these low-income countries and middle-income countries more vulnerable to STIs when you compare with high-income countries. So in our subsequent efforts to combat STIs, it will be crucial to put increased attention and healthcare resources to the countries that have the highest problem, as depicted with these burden studies. But now we have an additional problem, and that is drug resistance, which is pertinent for many agents of STI, especially for gonorrhea. As you will see during this course, there are many genetic features, but also other features that make gonorrhea prone to resistance. And gonorrhea is now a major threat to reducing the burden of STIs worldwide when we talk about drug-resistant gonorrhea. And on this graph from CDC, we see that whenever we introduce the new antibiotic against Neisseria gonorrhea, the microorganism quickly evolved to become resistant to a drug. Luckily, this is not the problem for some other STI agents, such as Chlamydia trachomatis. But for example, we have a similar issue with HIV. HIV is also becoming increasingly drug resistant, and we need drugs for HIV to preserve like the normal lifespan. So this is also a compounding problem for us potentially in the future. And all of this does not only undermine a substantial portion of the treatments that we currently use, but also impacts the effectiveness of the drugs used for infection prevention. And this is something we have to have in mind as well. So these are some literature novelties I found regarding the rise of antimicrobial resistance in STIs. So we have a recent modeling study that indicates that there is a potential time frame of approximately 1 decade before gonorrhea resistance to the current drugs that we use in the treatment reaches critical levels. So with this modeling study, we can make maybe enough space to strategize, to plan for the ongoing responsible use of antimicrobials, but also at the same time dedicate efforts to develop and assess novel antimicrobial agents. And also, it's worth noting that decline in adherence to the medications prescribed for HIV could also potentially worsen the transmission of drug-resistant strains. This is also that some of the new studies re-emphasize, and this is a topic that scientific literature consistently shows that it is a great cause of concern. So we need a vigilant monitoring, we need proactive measures to address adherence to HIV therapy, because non-adherence can and will lead to drug resistance in HIV as well. So considering everything we said, there is a substantial potential to mitigate the spread of sexually transmitted infections and reducing their adverse effects if we ultimately want to enhance the people's well-being. So to effectively tackle this pressing global concern, and if we want to prepare the nations to achieve everything that they have outlined in Sustainable Development Goals, now the WHO devised the Global Health Sector Strategy on STIs, and this also garnered approval from the World Health Assembly. But a main, and I would say crucial aspect of addressing this challenge is first to acquire comprehensive knowledge about the causative agents that are behind these diseases. And this is something that we aim to do with this course as well, because only if we have these profound insights into the microbiology of sexually transmitted infections, and both from fundamental and clinical perspectives, then we can actually pave the way to have enhanced diagnostic approaches and to have a better development of novel drugs and vaccines. So all of this will can have an immense public and global health effect. So I will just, after this snapshot of the importance and burden and significance of STIs, I will just shortly introduce myself following such kind introduction from also course coordinators. So yeah, I finished my MD degree at the School of Medicine, University of Zagreb in 2007. And then I immediately pursued my PhD education, also at the same university. And even then I became interested during my PhD, and this is also then my research topic, in both STIs and antimicrobial resistance. And I actually did a kind of a surveillance study and research in vitro efficacy of 3 drugs, azithromycin and doxycycline, which were first-line drugs to treat Chlamydia trachomatis, and also levofloxacin, that's a second-line drug, and see whether there is certain resistant trends in Chlamydia trachomatis. The thing is, these drugs are commonly prescribed, especially in some European countries like Croatia, and we were hoping whether to see some trends of Chlamydia trachomatis resistance here, but this will also be discussed in specialized Chlamydia trachomatis lecture that you will have during this course. And as my career in clinical microbiology progressed, I became more and more interested also in public health and then subsequently global health, which is then why I pursued the Master of Science in Public Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And yeah, this was my training in clinical microbiology, spanned between 2009 and 2013. I also tried to implement some pertinent microbiology topics during my training in clinical trials at Harvard. And then because of my clinical work with patients, especially male patients with STIs, I was able to undergo specialty examination in sexual medicine, which I passed in 2020. Current academic positions entail I'm an associate professor at University North in Croatia, also affiliate associate professor at University of Washington School of Medicine, following my Fulbright tenure, which I underdid there, which also Drew mentioned. I'm also mentor for some courses at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And at University North, my alma mater, I teach several undergraduate and graduate courses that tackle similar topics like tackled in this course. And these courses are such as microbiology and parasitology, hygiene and epidemiology, STIs in clinical practice, sexual and reproductive health within the healthcare sector. So these are some of the courses that I organize and coordinate and lead at University North in Croatia. And also, I'm deeply involved in nursing study programs there, and we are constantly founding some new programs, which I hope we can also maybe collaborate, all of us, in the future. This is something that I did at the University of Washington, an Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. It was a global burden of antimicrobial resistance. I got involved as a Fulbright visiting scholar and continue my research there to this day. We have a lot of new plans what to do and what to explore. And here in this capstone publication, we show that an estimated 4.95, almost 5 million people who died in 2019 suffered from at least one drug-resistant infection, which means they died and in their medical history, there was a drug-resistant organism, but we don't know if that organism was actually the cause of death. But the same study shows that AMR directly caused 1.3 million of those deaths. So it was a directly responsible agent. And actually the real truth lies somewhere between 1.3 million and 5 million of people dying with AMR. And common infections where these resistant bacteria and microorganisms were implicated were lower respiratory tract infections, bloodstream infections, and intra-abdominal infections, but also we assessed genital infections as well. And the study basically showed that everybody is at risk from AMR, but especially young children, especially in some regions such as Sub-Saharan Africa. And Sub-Saharan Africa faces the highest burden with more than 250,000 deaths due to AMR in just 1 year. There is still a high number of deaths caused by vaccine-preventable infections. There are a lot of children dying from AMR. But if you look at high-income countries, there is also alarmingly high levels of AMR, especially E. coli, which you already know commonly causes kidney infections, and Staph aureus, which is often acquired in hospitals and can cause bloodstream infections. So it's a different kind of population, usually hospitalized ones in intensive care units, but still dying from resistant bacteria. And here in this project, I mentioned we also estimate genital infections, but also we estimate the burden of antimicrobial resistance of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which we have shown in previous slides causes a lot of disability, and it will also be a topic of a whole lecture during this course. This is a recent study we published in Lancet Global Health. It's about the AMR burden in the WHO region of the Americas. So Brazil is also here included. You can see here these two striking maps of age standardized mortality rates per 100,000 person years for deaths that are associated with AMR. This is the graph on the left, and that's attributable to AMR or antimicrobial resistance. It's the graph or map on the right. And on the left, we see that when associated AMR is concerned, Brazil has between 60 to 70 deaths per 100,000 individuals in 2019. These are deaths where people die and have the resistant organism in their medical history or their test results. And we see that's quite a high number. And of course, any patient with a resistant bacteria, their initial disease can be complicated, and the pathway to death can be fastened. So this is important to have in mind. Previously, I also led a clinical microbiology unit. I was also head of the sexually transmitted disease clinic for men and coordinator of the interdisciplinary clinical research unit in a private sector. Now, because I continue my work with the University of Washington, I'm actually a full-time employee of the University North and combine my work with the University of Washington. Don't have much time for a lot of extra stuff, but I still participate as an expert evaluator for the European Union for many Marie Curie fellowship grants or some other grants, and I still advise our biggest pharmaceutical company, Pliva, when they develop certain antimicrobials or when they need certain consultant work. So as I mentioned, my initial area of interest was Chlamydia trachomatis. So this is where my PhD, this is the thematic area in which I did my PhD, and from then stemmed a lot of publications dealing with antimicrobial resistance in Chlamydia trachomatis. And also we pursued a couple of chapters and textbooks dealing with the same topic. But Chlamydia trachomatis is not my sole interest. When discussing sexually transmitted infections, my interest lies also in human papillomavirus and human immunodeficiency virus, HPV and HIV, where I did also various primarily epidemiological studies. So we also, with a team of colleagues, I assessed the prevalence of HIV, how does some sexual risk behaviors and testing patterns influence the prevalence in Sri Lanka. So we did a responder-driven survey there. I also, with colleagues at the University of Washington and Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, we assessed also on a global, regional, and national level the burden, mortality, prevalence, and incidence of HIV, also for a long time span. And we also devised some predictive forecasts. And regarding HPV, during my work in the sexually transmitted infection clinic, which I led, I also tried some novel treatment approaches, which I then published as case reports, potentially maybe for consideration in other patients as well. And I did also some epidemiological studies on HPV, how it spread among men, what is the optimal sampling approach, should we just sample the urethra or outer genital area as well? Is there actually a need to sample men in assessing the HPV burden and prevalence? These are all the questions that intrigued me. So a lot of research stemmed from there as well. So I also did some research in Trichomonas vaginalis, also epidemiology research, and Mycoplasma genitalium. These are microorganisms that we will also discuss during this course. And one microorganism, one bacterial agent called Corynebacterium glucuronalyticum, I started to research it because I used to find this organism in semen samples from men and urethral samples for men, and this organism was under-described in the medical literature. There was a lot of novelties which could be explored and researched, and based on my research, there is now a first classification of clinical urogenital syndromes in men, which are caused by this microorganism, and also a new term in the medical literature, uncloaking urethritis, when this microorganism surfaces after successful treatment of Chlamydia trachomatis infection. It is still rare, so we will not devote a lot of time during this course to these specific microorganisms. We have top guns, a lot of top guns that we need to put all of our concentration on, but I think I will also mention it again, and we will see what we will prepare, what I will prepare for the live lecture when I come to Brazil as well. One thing that we are all faced with is the emergence of antibiotic-resistant strains of E. coli or Escherichia coli. And there is also high infection recurrence rates after treatment. So what we need are novel approaches to efficiently treat and prevent urinary tract infections. And since adhesive organelles are principal virulence factors in uropathogenic Escherichia coli or E. coli, we thought that anti-adhesion strategy would be the most promising and which is also the most unexplored treatment option. So together with my research group at University North, we proposed an anti-adhesive dual targeting approach where we targeted adhesive proteins placed on two key virulence factors for E. coli, type 1 Fimbriae and P. pili. And such dual antagonists can actually contain mannose and natural cranberry containing polyphenols joined together. You see it on the figure right. And we think, and there are certain preliminary evidence that such combination can more effectively block the infection and prevent the transmission of the disease. And now we continue with the in vitro studies of these kind of compounds. We also applied for certain grants and projects, so we will see what will come of that as well. And this is a study that I published with a research group from Hungary as well. We appraised whether the encapsulation of antibiotics into liposomes can be considered an effective approach to improve local effects and also biological availability of the drug, biocompatibility, and antimicrobial activity to the oral therapy. And just a reminder, these liposomes are also used in COVID vaccines. So they are quite popular now. We started with this research before they become popular. And to test whether these liposomes could enhance the antichlamydial action of azithromycin, we encapsulated the antibiotic in different surface-charged elastic liposomes, and then we appraised their antibacterial potential against Chlamydia trachomatis. And we show that this can not only improve the effectiveness, but the local use may be even improved with this type of approach. This is just, I wanted to show the continuous collaboration with Tatiana, and now you all, actually Tatiana and me met through ASM, or American Society for Microbiology, through Ambassador Program and Young Leaders Circle, and we immediately started to collaborate on publications, but also on different events. Here I just showed one event also dealing with antimicrobial resistance, which we organized in Atlanta. The global scenario of antimicrobial resistance, do developing and developed countries share the same threats? And also I try to be active in other organizations as well, especially dealing with STIs and antimicrobial resistance. But I was also involved in the first microbiome project in Croatia. We actually assessed whether there is a difference in the constituents of microbiome of people who have certain inflammatory conditions of the bowel, such as ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, in comparison to people who are quote-unquote healthy, or they don't have these inflammatory bowel conditions. And we actually show that there is a difference in microbiome. I won't go into details, but we also praised what is the optimal approach to collect samples to assess microbiome, because stool sample is good, but then you don't get the fine microbial communities that are on the lining of the intestines. So sometimes for optimal approach, you would need to take some samples of the intestine to see the exact composition of microbial flora in the intestines. And we also did some rederivations of gut bacteria to human cells ratio. You often see and you often hear that we have 10 times more bacteria in our body than we have our own cells. Actually, the real number is closer to 1 to 1. It's around 1.3 to 1, also in favor of bacteria, which is still very impressive. But I will reveal you the secret. It depends whether you take erythrocytes into the calculation or not. So this ratio can be highly variable and depends on how you approach it, but we did some playing with it as well. And yeah, I'd always try to do science communication as much as possible. I also think there is something that you can be involved in the future, especially after this class. We can devise some strategies on how to optimally do this as well. One thing that I'm also very involved is an association called Healthcare Information for All. This is the organization that has vision of a world where every person will have access to the healthcare information they need to preserve their own health, but also health of those for whom they are responsible. And FIFA has now more than 20,000 members, not only healthcare workers, not only policymakers, but also fundamental researchers, researchers in general, librarians, publishers, everybody with an interest in healthcare information. And it actually represents approximately 3,000 organizations around 178 countries worldwide. I'm a country representative for Croatia and global coordinator for country representatives. So if you feel that you have something to represent Brazil as well, feel free to reach out to me, and then we can also talk about the inclusion to FIFA. What may be of interest to you is that FIFA members interact on 6 global forums in 4 languages. One of them is Portuguese. There is a special forum in that language, so this is also somewhere where your voice can be heard. And what's currently ongoing with FIFA, and what's very important because it's in official relations with the World Health Organization, is a global consultation that's going on this year until the end of this month. And actually, this is a global stakeholder consultation on the universal access to reliable healthcare information, which is deemed to be a pivotal step for a healthy world. And if you're interested, then I would ask you here also to complete the 5-minute survey, because all stakeholders and all interested individuals from every domain of science can participate, and it will help to have a global snapshot of how people see the universal access to reliable healthcare information. Regarding sexual health and sexual transmitted infections, I'm also leading a group in the European Sexual Medicine Network called Young Researchers and Innovators. Although you're not from Europe, and although this is the cost action that's characteristic for Europe, European Sexual Medicine Network, you can be involved. Actually, this cost action is ending, and we aim to be a self-standing network and self-standing organization. So if you have an interest in STIs or sexual health in general, you may join. Because also we have fundamental scientists, we have clinical scientists, and we have public health scientists, so everybody is welcome to contribute from their own perspective. And previously, I was the education officer in the executive committee of the European study group, or ESCMID study group for Mycoplasma and chlamydia infections. It's also an ongoing study group, and if some of you are members of ESCMID or interested to join European Society for Clinical Microbiology and Infectious Diseases, then you can automatically join ESMAC as well, especially if you have interest in chlamydia or genital mycoplasmas as as 2 important causative agents or 2 important causative groups of sexually transmitted infections. So now I want to say something about the course that we'll have, and that starts actually today with this inaugural lecture. So the course will span from today, or 18th of September, until 13th of October. In total, there will be 30 hours of course content, and you will have approximately 15 hours of video lectures. You will have a bonus lecture, and you will have a live lecture as well. And the remaining hours are your independent studies and drafting essays that I will also explain soon. And the objective of the course is for you to get advanced microbiological knowledge of pathogens causing these infections, to explore what causes resistance and why the trends are rising, but also to give you some insights into diagnostic procedures and tests. We will have 1 lecture also, and some lectures will also refer to the microbiome of the human reproductive system, because this is important to understand, because disruptions in this microbiome can also lead to diseased states, and then necessitate a targeted approach on how to make infected person or person with the disrupted microbiome healthy again, and how to stop this from happening in the future as well. Regarding the learning outcomes, so one of the visions of the course is for you to leave with a broad knowledge of relevant microorganisms that cause sexually transmitted infections, and By that, I mean all 4 groups: bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. And we will have a lot of fundamental and basic microbiology information, which may be of interest to you. A lot of virulence mechanisms, a lot of enzyme mentioning, structure mentioning, how they transmit genetic material, fundamentals of antimicrobial resistance development. But we will also touch clinical perspective, because there is no point of learning all about these microorganisms if we don't see what they do when they enter the human host. And we will also strive to provide you the understanding of the wide array of diagnostic methods that are used to identify these microorganisms, that are used to identify whether they are resistant to antimicrobial drugs, and that are used to reach the diagnosis as swiftly as possible. There will be also mention of optimal treatment approaches. I will not go into depth here, because it's mostly clinical and medical education, but of course I think you need to have knowledge in how antimicrobial chemotherapy works and what can be prescribed as first or second cycle of drugs, and how it works as well. We will also touch on STI epidemiology, and as I have already mentioned, reproductive tract microbiome, and we will explore preventative options, especially vaccinations. There you can use a lot of fundamental knowledge and a lot of epitopes and targets to develop various vaccines, and here you will get pertinent information that are relevant for you as well. One of the ideas and goals of the course is your collaborate work. You will have also a joint or group work project that you will present at the last day when we will be in person, from real-life scenario examples, from case reports, but also some of the tasks that you will have will ask from you to analyze recent research papers as well. So grade will consist of 4 parts. You will have 2 short essays. Each of them will consist of 25% of the grade. You will have team case report presentation, where you will discuss a real journal published medical case from Brazil involving STIs that will account for another 25% of the grade. And also on the last day, when we see each other live, you will have a short quiz, nothing too hard, but it will also constitute 25% of the grade. You will also get the complete course plan with the dates when each set of video lectures will be uploaded. And each of the video lectures will cover one topic and will be self-standing. So this means you can watch it without referring to the other lectures at your own pace and at your own direction as well. And of course, you will get also a PDF of presentations as a learning material that will accompany these video lectures. Together with the video lectures, there will be supplementary and optional reading material uploaded together with video lectures. So today we have this presentation in real time, and today or at the latest tomorrow morning, you will get 2 introductory video units with their presentation PDFs, covering overview and global epidemiology of sexually transmitted infections, and also mucosal immunity and resident microbiome in the human reproductive tract. This will be like an introduction to the reproductive tract in general and to the global burden of STIs. We touched on it a little bit today, but you will get a much more detailed approach when you will have access to these video lectures. And then on 20th of September, you will have 4 video lectures uploaded covering bacterial STIs, together again with PDFs and non-obligatory reading material. And these lectures will cover, like I said, bacterial STIs, but more specifically will cover chlamydia trachomatis or chlamydiasis, will cover Neisseria gonorrhea or gonorrhea, will cover Treponema pallidum or syphilis, and will cover genital mycoplasmas and emerging bacterial STIs, where also Corynebacteria will be mentioned. And then after this set of bacterial STI lecture videos and supplementary material, you will have an assignment, first short essay, approximately 500 words, covering fundamental microbiology of sexually transmitted infections, here concentrating on bacterial sexually transmitted agents, And the task in front of you will be to compare and contrast immune evasion mechanisms, but with the emphasis on the newer literature. You will get the exact instructions when the day comes for this independent study task 1. And assignment date here will be 28th of September 2023. All the assignments can be submitted to my email, which was also kindly provided by your university. Then we will continue on 27th of September with video lecture units covering viral sexually transmitted infections. And concretely here, we will concentrate on human immunodeficiency virus, human papillomavirus or HPV, and also genital herpes, viral hepatitis, and other viruses. These will be the 3 video lectures that will cover most important viral sexually transmitted infections. And following this set of videos, another task, another independent study task will be a second short essay, approximately 500 words as well, that will cover laboratory microbiology of sexually transmitted infections, primarily diagnostic approaches. And here, what will be asked from you is to compare and contrast testing options for HIV, for HPV, and genital herpes, again concentrating on what the newer literature has to say. Assignment due here will be October 5th, and again you can use the same email for your task submission. And then on 2nd of October, 3 video lecture units that will cover parasitic and tropical sexually transmitted infections will be uploaded, again with PDFs, again with non-obligatory reading material. And these will actually cover, so on 2nd of October, you will have a lecture that covers trichomoniasis, pubic lice, and scabies. On October 3rd, you will have a video lecture that covers lymphogranuloma venereum, chancroid granuloma inguinalis, so tropical diseases that are very important. And what is also important is the microbiology of the vaginitis syndrome, which will be covered, uploaded on 4th of October. I mean, the whole set will be uploaded at the same time, and then at your own pace, you can divide, as suggested, the work in accordance with these dates. And then you will have 3 video lecture units covering topics on treatment, prevention, and emerging antimicrobial resistance. So these video lecture units will be treatment and prevention, from topical microbicides to vaccines, emerging antimicrobial resistance in sexually transmitted pathogens, and probiotics against sexually transmitted infections, presenting the current state of research in the field and the domain. And your third independent study task, this is now the place where you will have group work. 4 small groups comprised of 3 to 4 students. You will have the group division on Google Classroom. Basically, course coordinators and me will divide the groups, so you don't group out with the people you usually hang out with. The point is also to learn to collaborate with everybody. And each of the groups will read one of the open access case reports published in the peer-reviewed journal that tackles clinical presentation and or treatment of a certain STI in Brazilian patients. So short PowerPoint presentations will be asked from you, and also presenting live on the final seminar. Everybody will have to present, regardless of how much of you are in the group, but we will discuss the details when you get more detailed instructions on how to conduct this independent study task. Here are some of the publications to get you an idea of what was assessed during the previous years. For example, gonococcal endocarditis, an ever-present threat. So an Neisseria gonorrhea that's present as an STI can also disseminate through blood to other organs, also can reach the heart and cause endocarditis or inflammation of the heart valves. This is very, very important because it can also lead to a fatal outcome. And then, for example, peritoneal chlamydia trachomatis infection as a cause of ascites, a diagnosis not to be missed. So this means this infection, when it spreads from the genital area to the abdomen or the belly, it can also cause the infection there. Or, for example, unusual presentation of a disseminated oral HPV infection after combined antiretroviral therapy initiation, or when you have a female patient with HIV, and when they get infected with herpes, they can sometimes get hypertrophic genital lesions, which means they grow really, really big. And then this case report asks what can be seen as a potential treatment option. So I think similar case reports that you will get, I think this is also a good learning opportunity to assess what STI can do from the virulence perspective, but also to start thinking what can you do to help this patient that is infected, what can you suggest, and what can you advise. So this presentation, you will, as I said, you will get more detailed instructions later, but basically it has to address the sexually transmitted infection in question. For example, the infection that you have the topic, what were the clinical features of the disease, what were the diagnostic findings, what was the treatment, how was the follow-up period, as well as what lessons have you learned from this case. But then again, it shouldn't be longer than 10 slides or 10 minutes, so we have enough time for the discussion afterwards. So this assignment you will be on the last day, but submission submission to this email should be done at the day of presentation in the morning if we have it later in the afternoon. So this is important, so everybody sends the presentation at the same time before the presentation starts, so there is no further amending once we start with the presentations. And the final course will be a quiz that will be held after the final assignment. It will be not too hard. The quiz will have multiple choice question format with several options, but only one correct answer. So this is something to where all of these preparatory material will be of use to you. But like I said, nothing too hard, so you don't have to be scared with this quiz. If you have any questions about the course content, you can always reach me at my email address. Preferably, you can write to the Google Classroom. So if you have something that you have in mind, most probably other people will have it in mind or wouldn't understand as well. So discussion would be of benefit there. But anyway, I will also try to prompt the discussion in the Google Classroom as well. Maybe a good idea would be also to select a student representative from all of you attending the course so we can better facilitate the interactions. But this is not a necessity. You will see how you will feel about it. But once again, at any time you can reach me at my email address. I will during this course I check it regularly, so you will get a response in a day time, 24-hour time. And before I end this introductory presentation, maybe I just wanted to show you and present you my country where I came from. So you get some of the context, since I will get a lot of context from Brazil when I come. So Croatia is a rather small country within Central Europe. Capital is Zagreb. Official language is Croatian. We are the member of the European Union since 2013. From this year, our currency is euro. We had the Croatian kuna, but now we have euro as a common currency in the European Union. And we have a small population compared to Brazil. So we have less than 4 million people in Croatia. But still, I would say a vibrant population, as you will see soon. But one of the problems in Croatia and the population of Croatia is the aging population. This is not solely a problem of Croatia. It's a problem in the whole European Union as well. But now also Croatia is opening the borders a bit, so I think also demographic structure will change. Our main economy branch is tourism. You can also relate in Brazil, you have a lot of tourists. We also have a lot of tourists. We are among the most prominent and basically the breakthrough country regarding tourism in the European Union and Europe in general. A lot of people are now coming, especially after COVID recovery. And this is then of no wonder that the tourism accounts for up to 20% of Croatian gross domestic product. We earn a lot from the tourism. And here on the left, you can see Dubrovnik. It's one of the most famous coastal cities in Croatia. It's a city where a Game of Thrones were filmed, for the people who saw the show. So that's why we got a lot of tourists now in Dubrovnik who come and want to see the sites where the TV show was filmed. Why it was so popular is, as you can see here, this is a distinctive old town that's encircled with massive stone walls. It was completed in 16th century. From the medical perspective, what was important, the first quarantine was there. From the sailors that came to Dubrovnik, they had to be 40 days locked up before they could have been let go. So this was the first quarantine in Dubrovnik. And on the right, you can see Plitvice Lakes. It's also one of the most striking national park in Croatia, one of the magnets for tourists, characterized by these beautiful waterfalls and beautiful lakes and beautiful nature. We are also famous for some inventions. So Nikola Tesla was actually born in Croatia. Of course, you know that Tesla discovered the principle of the rotating magnetic field. He enabled the creation of the first electromotor running with alternative current. So we are all aware of the significance and magnitude of Nikola Tesla. But also the first real pen was invented by the Croat, Edward Penkala. That's why also it's called pen, because his surname was Penkala. So this is also actually a Croatian invention, as well as the tie. So in 17th century, the Croats made it a custom to put a piece of textile around the neck as a detail of fashion and recognizableness. So this is also a tie is a Croatian invention. And we have a lot of ancient discoveries in Croatia. So in one of the national parks, Brijuni, we have more than 200 footprints from dinosaurs. We had Roman buildings, so Arena of Pula was is still one of the best preserved Roman amphitheaters in the world. And actually once we fastened the biggest tie in the world around the whole Arena of Pula, which was 808 meters long, and the lower part of the tie was 25 meters wide. And there are a lot of living fossils actually in Croatian islands. We have huge amount of small islands on our coast. So also some species survived that actually show the evolutionary history and actually enrich our whole coast. We are also a very successful nation in sports. So our Olympic skier Janica Kostelić entered history as the most successful skier ever in the Olympic Games, always winning golds. But also what Brazil is more familiar with, Croatia has quite a vibrant national team. We were third in 1998. We were third last year in the World Cup. And in 2018, we reached the World Cup final. So always good players in our national team. And we also have good tennis players. So Croatia has a Wimbledon and US Open champions, Goran Ivanišević and Marin Cilic. And we have also 2 Davis Cup wins. On a more serious side, regarding higher education system in Croatia, we have in total 55 institutions of higher education. We have 9 public universities. So University North, where I come from, is a public university. The oldest one is University of Zagreb, founded in 1669, still the oldest continuously operating university in Southeast Europe. But the first university in Croatia was University of Zadar. It's also one of the coastal cities, which was founded at the end of 14th century and remained active until 1807. But then other institutions of higher education took over. But now, 20 years ago, University of Zadar opened again, which is good. And we have many universities of applied sciences, of which several are private. So it's, for such a small country, we have a good network, I would say, of higher education institutions around Croatia. And as European Union and Europe in general, we had a comprehensive reform within the framework of the Bologna process, aimed at harmonizing the systems of higher education in order to create the European higher education area in Europe. And we now have 3 cycles of the education, which is not so far from the American way. We have undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate, which is founded on the ECTS, or European Credit Transfer System, so students can more easily change universities, not only in the country, but also in Europe and beyond, in order to have their points and their studies recognized. So with this collaboration with Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, I think also when I come live and when we cite certain memorandum of understanding, we will be more able to host workshop conferences and other joint events, as well as to kickstart some short-term research projects and joint grants, possibly visiting seminars, joint publications, and also participation at courses. We are quite fond, and you as well, to organize a lot of different courses, events, conferences, which can be done online as well, and where we can make a more thorough collaboration. But what I'm also keen and interested in is our exchange programs that we can maybe pursue in the future as well, because I think we share some goals. We share a goal of scholarly communication or better dissemination of research to a wider academic community. We share a goal of teaching excellence, research excellence or integrity, increasing global presence of our universities, but also the goal of diversity and inclusion. So in this hour, I try to give the overview of a lot of things, overview of the STI burden importance, epidemiology in general, overview of my career path and my research goals, also overview of the course, of the Croatia as the country where I stem from, and also what are our shared goals in further collaborating and going beyond this course, where you will learn a lot of things about sexually transmitted infections, and especially microbiology of sexually transmitted infections. So thank you for your attention today. And if you have any questions, comments, or ideas immediately, I welcome you to share it with me. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Juliana?
Hi. Thank you so much, Tommy. It was a great talk. It's a great topic. And thank you for going through your amazing career. That shows us how much you can get done in 24 hours. It's incredible. Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Pessoal, pode fazer pergunta em português que eu traduzo, se precisar. Let's see if we have questions in the chat. Well, I can start with a question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So I've been seeing the same thing on the increase of STIs, which to me, I was actually surprised, because I would think that if you know more, you would avoid more. So is there like a social or world health situation that can explain this increasing cases?
Yeah, so it's hard to give like a short answer to your question, because we have so many different STIs, and each of them has so many factors that can influence on its spread, on its incidence, prevalence, and also disease-causing potential. We now, just 1 year ago, we had a scare from the monkeypox, which was a disease that was previously not spread sexually, or theoretically could have been spread sexually. But now we had a new situation where microorganisms changed a bit, found new hosts, found new ways of spread, and made itself into a sexually transmitted infection. Luckily, this dissipated, but also, especially when I come live, I will also give a snapshot of what happened with monkeypox. Again, with other more established diseases, there are many factors that can influence. For example, when we created better drugs to address human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, these drugs were slowly then used also to prevent the spread. So you could take these drugs in a way as a pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is properly known as PrEP, in order to halt the spread. And this was really, really highly effective. And it still is highly effective to prevent the spread of HIV. But then people feel secure. I cannot get HIV now anymore. And now you open the door to the spread of other diseases, other sexually transmitted infections that are not covered with pre-exposition prophylaxis or PrEP. So we see a boom in syphilis, we see a boom in gonorrhea, especially in MSM population that uses mostly PrEP or pre-exposition prophylaxis. So, for example, this is one factor or one example. And for every disease, we can find weak spots, and we can also find a spot that the organism exploits to gain traction and to spread better. And I think during this course, for every organism and for every lecture, you will have an epidemiology part where you will understand what is necessary for the organism to spread. And you will also then start to think, oh, okay, this is maybe the reason why the incidence or prevalence is increased in recent years. Mm-hmm. So this was just one example, but epidemiology is complex and many factors interplay in why this is still an ongoing problem, but not only an ongoing problem, but also an increasing problem.
Thank you so much. I do have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
So why would erythrocytes play a role in the microbiome detection in STI patients?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so towards the part of your talk that you were talking about microbiome in STI patients, I think you mentioned that erythrocytes play a role in the detection of the species that you can detect.
No, I think that was misunderstood. I was talking about, so you probably heard that in a lot of articles, in a lot of venues, you can hear that we have 10 times more bacteria in our body than we have cells. Mm-hmm. And during my microbiome studies, we did some research and rederivation and showed that it's not actually 10 times more. It's maybe 1.3 times more. It's still more, but much lower. But this ratio highly depends on whether you count erythrocytes as cells or not, because some people don't count it because they don't have nucleus. Mm-hmm. So it's a problematic question. And when we discuss microbiomes or how many bacteria we have in relation to our cells, we always have to ask, okay, but in relation to which cells? Do you count erythrocytes or not? And what went into the denominator of this ratio? So these are some important questions. But this is a bit off topic of the sexually transmitted infections. Actually, erythrocytes are not, basically, I don't have many examples where they are implicated in the pathogenesis or pathophysiology.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying this for me. Anna, do you have questions? No, okay. So, Tommy, thank you so much for being with us today. And I can't wait to see you here in Rio and to have you and host you at the Institute. It will be great to see you very soon, and safe travels to Brazil.
Thank you a lot. Thank you for a wonderful introduction, leading this inaugural lecture. And I'm also looking forward to the course and seeing you all live soon. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.